And we are rolling here at UCLA on February 25th. And we're going to address the question whether this House would ban children from receiving any religious instruction, preaching, or ceremony. Wow. And on the government will be John, and for the opposition, Jorge. Ban children from receiving any religious instruction, preaching, or ceremony. What will the state think of next? Okay. Okay. Rock and roll, sir.
Well, first off, my name's Josh. And I'm on the affirmative of banning children from receiving any religious instruction, preaching, or ceremony. The only definition I actually want to really set aside is child, an unborn or recently born person, or a young person, especially between infancy and youth. I find it important here to define what the type of people we are talking about. The audience should be clear that we are talking about a person that's still within the process of gaining skills to cognize and such. So what's the problem here? Children are being taught these things at ages where it may seem as though it is solely through the parents' intention of putting them through their own religion. On such an occasion, the topic of free will must be put forth. What can we define as a child's choice? What truly is best as a child? And do we treat a child as though it has the mentality of adults? According to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of a Child, it has guidelines regarding the form and content of reports to be submitted by states. Parties provide that states are requested to provide relevant information on the minimum legal age defined by national legislation for choosing a religion or attending religious school teaching. Basically, that is the age limiting for a child to actually have cognizing thoughts to choose a religion or not. Although this method ultimately lessens a child's decision-making capacities, it also proves hard to go through on account of parents and guardians pushing for more force to join their own religion. There's a Christian group that actually goes to public places and tries to draw children in by means of music and having games. The group won a 2001 case that was brought up with the Supreme Court that essentially allowed them to hold chapter meetings on school grounds. Examples of such places are parks and pools. They then set up a tarp and play music to entice children, have games where it's familiar to filling in the blank when the subliminal message involved actually has to do with God and such. They could be also very well use children to entice other children in classes and such. When a fellow classmate had refused to accept going to a proposed Bible study, the young member of the church had told her classmate that she would go to hell. All this was also done without parental permission. If the argument of how their free will is not in danger, how would we as adults feel about being in their shoes at that age? That happens now, but we don't openly let our children go and sit to listen. The main point here is that they're doing such a thing because they have this mentality. If they didn't, they would not be trying to entice these children on their own without our supervision. They believe the children have the same free will as us and can justify ideas as well as we do. Amongst everything in this situation, can we wholeheartedly believe that the United States joining a different religion aside from Christianity would be okay to children? The image is said okay because you have a person with a guitar playing music, setting in people with harps, but can the rest of the United States be okay to Islam, Judaism? Sad, but no. Are we justified settling our next future generations as such? These types of decisions affect who we are today, and we are entitled to act as are we entitled to act as such with each other? We indeed are, however, a child does not yet think as we do. Also, a choice of whether or not people are prepared to have their children exposed to religious children when they aren't themselves. Those who may not be religious in the first place may be at risk in the sense that they may touch upon a subject they are not prepared for their children to hear. There are also extreme cases where children who are very innocent are being brought to hate things and do such things deemed bad and such. Examples of these children are the children holding up signs for the Westboro Baptist Church, or child soldiers reporting their belief for the Islamic State of Iraq and Lebanon, or ISIS. How big is the problem? The aforementioned group, the Good News Club, had spanned out to a number of cities and states, and their numbers for recruitment are growing at an ever-fast rate. This is becoming a concern fast that could go from one city to another. According to the new civil rights movement written by David Balsh, established in 1937, the Child Evangelicalism Fellowship says it is a Bible-centered organization composed of born-again believers whose purpose it is to evangelize boys and girls with the gospel of Lord Jesus Christ and to establish them in the Word of God and in the church for Christian living. The group is at a self-reported rate of 250,000 teachers a year, and if that's taken into consideration, this group can be a legitimate threat to a problem for the community. Also big and harsh enough to have drawn attention from other countries. The Right of the Child to Religious Freedom in International Law by Sylvie Langelude is comparing us to countries in the same dilemma, but is ultimately treated differently. An example of this would be a 10-year-old who would want to change religion in Germany. The child must first go through a hearing before anything. The same case if the child would want to stop receiving religious instruction altogether. Although when the child becomes 12, they are free to stop believing anything against their will, and by 14, the child is able to freely choose their religious denomination. Why do we have this problem? Laws that were made for keeping religion out of classes are still inching its way piece by piece. We are already incorporated such clubs acceptable in high school and middle school. At this point, it slowly becomes more acceptable for us to pick religion at that age. Things could possibly pass off as innocent clubs or organizations offering other things aside from their worship. All the more reason why is to make laws on a sensitive subject more stricter. Catherine Stewart mentioned in one of her interviews when asked about how she feels about the organizations as a whole, she responded that underlying causes such as heads of the corporations and groups. Most of the groups recorded are known to be conservative legal groups. They must prey on support even from a very early point in people's lives as a setup process easier for the next generation. So what's the solution? Make absolutely strict laws that would verify if a child would be able to proceed on their own will or simply because of the nurture provided since birth. These laws should be able to decipher if they can choose on their own. If anything, we have been prepared to have them exposed not to our knowledge, but when they are at their most vulnerable state. Have alternatives prepared with regards to gaining the same type of nurture at an early age, the manners and all, without necessarily having any teaching regarding sin or something of that nature just yet. According to Sue Fliss from education.com, a child can sustain trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship without having to be exposed to a religion early on. In actuality, a child is simply being taught the fundamentals as to be a good citizen in our society with polite manners. Will the solution work? In theory, if presented with these solutions, children could all grow up in a more open and choice-filled environment.
One left.
A Republican from Columbia, Middle Tennessee, said, with regards to children already doing such activities, I want our children to possess the mentality, the mental maturity to have a firm foot in their beliefs, as well as have the mental acuity to know when to question and to report to their parents what they are being taught if necessary. Children are not prone to hearing such things as they are having a life full of sin. Something else that seems potentially traumatizing to a 4-year-old could possibly be on the rise. On the balances, what outweighs definitely the advantages. To have a child which is also a member of the United States essentially restricted to one religion early on is not a good thing for free practicing. Rather, free will should be imposed early on so as to let them know any choice they make is for the best. New communities could be a thing. Closed off sects of specific religions can be abolished, become more irrelevant, and we become more of a holistic community. How much of religious practice ends up being on account of parents in the first place? If religion shouldn't stand the test of time or age, and I now stand open for cross-examination.
Thank you. That was 7:20. Okay, stand up for cross-examination, sir. Chair will now recognize the member of the opposition to conduct a cross-examination period. Again. Hi, Jorge. Stand close together so I can get you both on the trusty camera of mine. Thank you, sir.
Right. So one of the first things that you mentioned is that the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Children has guidelines of how to submit reports on the minimum age for choosing a religion. How is that relevant to your argument that children should not be exposed to religion at an early age?
Children in the first place shouldn't be exposed to such things because at those ages specifically, mental cognition, and you don't think, according to a psychology reading that I have, can't find it right now, but it says the human mind doesn't know what it essentially wants for sure until the age of about 20 to 21, by which 4 to 11, I believe, is the age of a child is nowhere near.
Right, but how does guidelines of how to report the minimum age for a child to choose the religion relevant?
I was kind of building off that in the sense that I thought it was a good standpoint that such a low age would be considered in the first place.
So you would agree that it's not part of your main argument?
I guess.
Alright. You also mentioned chapter meetings on school grounds. Are these during class times?
Here, look out here.
Yes. Yes, they are.
In what states?
Oregon.
And why was this law passed?
It was brought up with the 2001 Supreme Court hearing that they won, in the sense that they were just passing it off back then as a Christian group gathering together, and any members they want would come and join them. But it didn't specify as to what age or what type of process the members could join in the first place. So all the more they're reaching out to the children.
How are these meetings different from teaching children about African religions, Judaism, Islam, religions that are not so common and less attacked in the United States?
Because they're ultimately trying to entice these children to join their religion in the first place. That type of education that you just mentioned is learning about those religions, maybe learning
30 seconds.
But ultimately, your argument there they're trying to entice them by telling them they're living a life of sin. You know, they're going to a lake of fire at the end of everything, and that's not right.
Okay. You also said that hate is taught to children by religion, and okay, there have been cases where children are being taught to hate because of their religion. Would you agree that there's also instances where children are taught to hate political ideologies?
That's time. Answer the question.
I didn't even hear all of it. Okay, what was it?
I said, would you agree that that children are also taught to hate political ideologies by schools and other institutions, not just religion?
Yes. Well, not essentially hate, because hate is definitely a strong word. I don't know how much time I have to answer this.
You're done.
I don't have any time to answer.
Stick a fork in it. You're so done. Okay, let's hear. Thank you very much. Now it's time to. Chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition for his speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. Begin.
Hi, my name is Jorge.
Hi, Jorge.
So the topic is that the United States should ban children. The resolution is that the United States should ban children from receiving any religious instruction, preaching, or ceremony. And I'm going to be presenting this in the negative. The criteria for assessing the merit of the resolution will consist of the quality of the evidence presented in support of, or against the legality and the implications of this resolution. For definitions, I define children as any persons of ages 4 to 11 as per the CDC guide, definition published in 2016. And then religious instruction in this proposal means any religious education provided outside of the government-funded schools or events. So what is the problem? Banning religious instruction, preaching, and ceremonies to children is an outright violation of the First Amendment. This ban would infringe on our freedom of religion. A study performed on the impact of childhood Catholic education showed that childhood programming is already a key component of the Catholic educational enterprise, and also a great opportunity for family faith development and evangelization, according to Catholic Education in 2013. Banning the religious instruction would cripple the Catholic faith and other religions considerably. It would even eradicate their presence in the U.S. Religious followers would interpret this as an attack on their freedom of religion, and they would respond accordingly. Furthermore, this ban would infringe on our freedom of speech. By controlling what citizens can or cannot say, the government gains the power to definitely suppress ideological opposition. Once we forfeit our right to free speech, we forfeit a critical defense against the abuse from governmental authority.
5.
Banning religious instruction, preaching, and ceremonies to children would interfere with the implied rights of parents and guardians to conduct the upbringing of their children. Several cases have found that parental rights are a fundamental right protected by the U.S. Constitution. The first one is the Supreme Court first adopted the notion of parents' rights in Mayer versus Nebraska in 1923, when it held that parents have the fundamental right to instruct their children in a foreign language. The court found that this fundamental right derived from the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, which grants the parents rights to establish a home and bring up their children, according to the William and Mary Bill of Rights Journal, published 2013.
Slide over this way a little bit, please.
2 years later, in 1925, the decision of Pierce versus Society of Sisters, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a compulsory attendance act that required all parents to send their students to public schools instead of private schools or religious schools.
4.
The court concluded that the act was unconstitutional because it unreasonably interferes with the liberty of parents and guardians to direct the upbringing and education of children under their control, according to William and Mary Bill of Rights, Journal 2013. So simply put, any restriction on religious instruction is illegal not just due to the previous rulings, but because it is a constitutional right. A ban on religious freedom or freedom of speech would cause civil unrest or even war, with devastating economic, humanitarian, and developmental consequences here in the United States. Citizens have historically rebelled against governments who participate in intrusion or persecution of the religious activities. An example of this is the Cristero Wars in Mexico during 1926, in which thousands of rebels took arms after the government decided to strip the Catholic Church of its properties and prohibited religious education in schools.
3.
So how big is the problem? The ban would affect roughly 244 million Americans who consider themselves members of a religion, according to Census.gov 2016. According to the Pew Research Center, 76.5% of Americans identify themselves as religious. So banning religious preaching, instruction and ceremonies in children would cause not only constitutional problems, but it would cause major uprisings if the religious population feels threatened. So my solution to the problem, or actually the non-issue of children being exposed to religious instruction, preaching, and ceremonies involves our allowing just current measures to continue in place. We should allow the parents to determine what instruction, preaching, and ceremonies they'll allow their children to partake in. And this is simply because they do have the constitutional right to bring their children the way they see fit. The United States government should be able to intervene through Child Protective Services or the appropriate agency if the religious instruction or ceremonies evidently harms the child or encourages him or her to harm others. However, this should be allowed only after very careful review of the case. Will the solution work? This is a status quo, and to this date there have been no major conflicts. The advantages to my proposal are not only would we avoid a major constitutional violation, we would also avoid the cost of creating a new regulatory agency that is in charge of enforcing this ban, and also it would prevent us from having to stretch the resources of the current agencies that would be able to enforce this. So, on balances, economically the implementation of such a law would be a waste of resources. Not only would it be expensive for the government, and by extension the public, but it would never successfully enforce the ban. There would be too much resistance. The adherence to the constitutional laws is much more important than the inconvenience of someone holding different beliefs. The enforcement of such an illegitimate law could have disastrous consequences for the United States. If it comes to a violent conflict, we could expect this country to suffer significant economic, humanitarian, and developmental harm. So allowing the ban to pass as a law would expose us to authoritarian rule where not even the most basic constitutional rights will be respected.
That's time. I now stand open for...
I stand open for cross-examination.
Thank you.
Do I introduce myself? No. Hi, I'm Josh.
Sure, we'd love to meet you. Hi, Josh.
Hello. So the first thing I want to touch upon is the resources. I said money-wise, we take a big hit that way. Be curious as to how.
Well, first of all, in order to enforce the law, you need to create some sort of body that will be enforcing the law. So it would be definitely a cost to the government to either stretch the resources of existing bodies or creating a completely new one just for the sole purpose of regulating or banning religious education in children.
What type of enforcement do you think it's really going to take, and why do you think it's going to cost that much money to put us in a state of homeless deficit?
What kind of enforcement? That really doesn't concern me because it shouldn't. My point is that we shouldn't ban the religious education in children. And as for the economic impact, you would have to look at the amount of really the resources, the amount of money that already goes into law enforcement and other agencies that intervene in children's life.
Okay. How about crippling the religion as a whole? You stated that this ban would ultimately make the religion have a big religion as a whole take a gigantic hit, but I fail to see how maybe people that find the religion early on in their life, or maybe just the majority of people in the religion in the first place. I know you stated 244 million, of which I'd honestly like to know how many of our adults and how many can cognize these type of abstract thoughts of God, religion, and such. I want to see how it would cripple religion.
How
banning,
people?
Yeah, banning, children that can barely walk. How would that cripple?
Well, as I mentioned, during childhood, childhood is the most important stage in religious development, according to a study published by a Catholic organization. So, based on that, if you don't allow them to expose children at a young age to their beliefs, then you really are crippling them. You're not allowing them to practice their religion freely.
That's time.
All right, a good one. All right.
And we will now hear our rebuttals. You have 3 minutes to refute what your opponent said. You may take a seat.
Okay. So I disagree with Jorge in the sense that joining religion. The argument I'm trying to make is not to take away the rights, the First Amendment rights, but rather preserve them. After maybe the age of 10, 11 or so, when they can actually think about these abstract ideas, it is ultimately up to them, because the nurture that we would give them would ultimately, I agree, influence them on their thoughts later on in life, and a life-altering decision such as taking up a religion such as this, I believe is not in our control. Many more open thinkers will be produced by this per se ban, rather than people that are not essentially closed-minded, but already have a firm base as a belief. And again, since scriptures are apparently everlasting and religion is supposed to be something that people find their lifelong journey for, I don't see why it can't wait just a couple more years, in the sense that's when they would really get a firm grasp of who they are, what they believe in, and so forth. Therefore, we should ban children from receiving any type of
religious instruction.
Preaching ceremony.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's hear from the opposition as to why we should not ban religious instruction, preaching, or ceremony.
My name is Jorge.
Hi, Jorge.
So, you said that your point is to preserve First Amendment rights, and I disagree with that because what you are proposing is a ban on a religious practice, and by definition that is making a law about religion, and the First Amendment explicitly says that Congress shall make no law of religion, pertaining to religion. So, also...
We'll go over this way just ahead. Thank you.
You said that the early stages of development are the most... children can't really grasp abstract ideas, and that this nurture would make them follow their parents in their religion. I disagree because I have evidence here that says that in a study done across various different religions in various different areas of the U.S., they found no correlation between the religiosity of the children's parents and their willingness to evangelize it with the belief that children held in whether or not they believe in the afterlife. Therefore, I believe that we should not ban religious education, ceremonies, or even preaching to children.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're running out of time, so very quickly fill out your ballots. We'll take a vote and be done for the day. When you're completed and to the page, be sure you made a decision, you sign it. In the top one, sir. You move with stunning alacrity. Do I have them all? Well, I have a MacBook just like that. Still running.
No, I know. So is mine.
They don't stop. My silver one that I got to replace it has been in the shop 3 times.
You just update this. The main.
Do I have all the ballots?
Okay, I have that.
Yeah.
Do I have all the ballots? I do.
Obviously, yes. I'm asking. I'm asking.
Yeah, good job, Dominic. No decision.
Yeah, for sure.
Dominic, no decision.
What do you mean? Oh, I didn't fill out the form. I put out the numbers, but I didn't write it down. I'm sorry.
Okay, shall I assume from who you gave the most points
Yes,
to,
sorry.
that's how you want to vote? Okay.
Sorry.
In a 1 to 11 decision, the ballot goes to the opposition. And there's a class chomping at the bit, so just a very short comment from everyone. One sentence. How'd you vote? And one sentence why?
Okay, first of all, I think...
Name?
Oh, my name is Johnny. And first of all, I think they both of them have done a really good job. And I think I will choose...
How'd you vote and why, big guy?
Was very fast. Just one sentence. Like
Government, opposition, I hate God, you know? Something like that. Keep it simple.
I will opposition.
You voted opposition. Thank you.
hi, my name is Diego.
Stand up for Jesus, please.
Well, that's one reason why I vote. I just felt Jorge had more compelling evidence, and he had a lot of strong claims with the legal system. So.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey. I sided with the opposition. The reason is because the government did not connect with the audience. He wasn't really looking at the audience. He was mostly reading most of the time. Also, he had a lot of arguments, but not a lot of evidence, so that's why I decided.
Right. Not qualified either, yes.
Sam,
Hi, Sam.
I voted for Josh because I thought Jorge didn't really defend the rights of the children.
Interesting. The one vote, huh? Okay.
I'm Robin Wells. I voted for Jorge. First Amendment, #1 priority for most Americans. Religion, freedom of speech, and parents' rights.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I voted opposition because I thought it was well organized, well supported, and he did well on the cross-examination.
Dominic, I voted for Jorge. I thought all of his sources were extremely credible.
Elizabeth, I also voted for the opposition. Main impacts, constitutional violation of very important amendments like free speech, also parental rights, and then Josh completely ignored the fact that if you're banning something, you have to enforce it, and so I think that was a good point.
Hi, Raymond. I voted for the opposition, George, because I felt that the government provided some counterintuitive arguments of how development and children too young age, so they shouldn't be able to decide for themselves.
Right.
Hi, I'm Matt. I voted for opposition because Josh admitted his argument was irrelevant during the cross-examination, and it sounded like his disagreements were predicated on his own personal disagreements with Christian theology by saying phrases like sin and lake of fire to children rather than looking out for the rights of the children.
Liz the hat.
Hi, I'm Brian. I voted for the opposition. I thought the cross-examination was extremely telling, and thought Jorge had a more credible sources.
And our work is done. Thank you.